Hello, everyone. So as Steve said, I'm with GOED, and for those of you who don't know GOED, we are the global organization for EPA and DHA omega-3s. So we represent about 150 companies around the world that are suppliers and manufacturers of EPA and DHA-based omega-3s. So one of the things that we try and do at GOED is make sure that the industry and ultimately the consumer is educated about what's important to know in the world of omega-3s. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you today about sustainability, because that's an area that you certainly read a lot about in the consumer press, and it's just something that there's a lot of myths really about what's going on with sustainability. So the first thing I wanted you to know is that the Peruvian anchovy fishery is fine. So to give you some background, 80% of the omega-3 oil that goes into supplements and functional foods comes from anchovies. So when you're buying that bottle of soft gels on the local health food store shelf, chances are, there's an 80% chance that will be coming from anchovy oil. The majority of anchovy oil comes from Peru. So a very large part of the omega-3 business revolves around what's going on with the Peruvian anchovy fishery. There's been a lot of controversy about this in the last 6 months or so, because last fall, so let me back up. The Peruvian government monitors the fishery, and they tell the fishermen how much they can harvest. They listen to a group called EMARPE, which is their scientific arm that monitors how much biomass is in the ocean and tells them, here's how much of the quota can be based on this biomass. So last fall, EMARPE found lower than normal biomass, so they actually cut the allowable quota by 68%. So that was a huge number. There was a lot of conversation about it, a lot of concern about the supply situation. And of course, the media said, oh, the anchovy fishery is on the verge of collapse. This is a terrible thing. So flash forward to last week when EMARPE completed their most recent sonar survey, and they recorded the highest biomass on record. So now they're saying there are 12 million metric tons of anchovies. And as I said, it's the highest on record. But even then, they still made their allowable quota based on a number of 10.8 million tons. So even though they're saying there's 12 million, they felt like there was a large number of juveniles, young anchovy, in the biomass, and they wanted to make sure that they had time to mature. So they still based their quota on a more conservative number. Now, the question is, what happened in the last 6 months? What really made this situation so drastically different from November to April? We talked to a lot of our members who are familiar with that area, and what they said is, it's the weather. Everything in an ecosystem is controlled by what's going on in the climate. Last year was an El Nino year. There were warmer currents going through that area, and the anchovy, being cold water fish, went deeper in the ocean. So when they did their survey, they didn't detect these fish because they were too deep. So now, in April, the weather has changed. The anchovy are back up where they normally expect to find them, and the biomass is back where it needs to be, or where we all expected it to be. So regardless of whether that really was what happened, the real takeaway is that the Peruvian government is on top of what's going on there. It's in their best interest, it's in the livelihood of their fishermen and their industry to make sure that they keep this as a sustainable fishery, and they're very aware of that and really are on top of what's going on. The second thing I wanted to say is sustainability is not an endpoint. You don't get somewhere and then you're sustainable. It really is a moving target that continues to change and evolve. Even groups that are certifying sustainability, Marine Stewardship Council, MSC, is probably the most well-known and definitely has a high standard. But if you look at a Marine Stewardship Council certification, they have a list of, I forget how many different categories, and they say either red, green, or yellow for each of those categories. And if you get enough green, then you're certified. But they don't stop there. They come back and reevaluate every 2 years. It is a work in progress to maintain sustainability. And in this particular case, MSC may be looking at what's going on over here in the ocean, making sure that you're catching the right amount of the target species, you're not getting bycatch of other species, and you're taking care of the predators and the birds and the whole ecosystem. But from here in the ocean to this bottle on the shelf over here, there's a lot more that has to happen. And that really has to be considered too when you think about the whole life cycle of the product. So you have to make sure that you're considering water conservation, and you have pollution controls, and you're recycling, and you're doing all the other things in a manufacturing plant that you should be doing to be considering a full life cycle assessment. So it's not just what's going on in the ocean. It continues to be a moving target. And it will change as the world changes, the ecosystem that you're working with changes. As technology evolves and improves, hopefully some of this will get easier, but it really does need to be a whole life cycle analysis that we're thinking about. And the final thing I wanted to say is we are not going to run out of fish because of fish oil. This is another thing you hear in the consumer media, that everybody's taking fish oil, so we're ruining the fish population. Omega-3s are so popular, this is the reason that there's no fish in the ocean. The reality of this situation is that of all of the fish that is harvested today, about 4% goes into omega-3s. And another interesting number is 10 to 12% of the fish oil that comes out of the ocean is giving us two-thirds of the EPA and DHA that is taken up by humans. So what that means is the vast majority of the fish that we're fishing is not used for omega-3s. And the fish that is for the most part one of these truly sustainable, well-managed fisheries. So we really are doing the right thing when we look at omega-3s coming from the ocean and being taken care of sustainably. But the other thing that's important to look at when you think about what's coming out of the ocean, right now we know our supply situation is where it is. There's plenty of new sources beyond anchovies, for example, of marine life that could supply the EPA and DHA omega-3 industry. So there's a lot of work going on different fish that haven't necessarily been used for omega-3s. There's plenty of work going on in the algae industry, which is of course very sustainable. And I'm sure several companies here, there's 4 or 5 different companies that are about to commercialize production of algae. So that really is going to change the whole supply dynamic. And then farther down the road, there's also some land-based omega-3s in production, so some genetically modified plants, for example, that will be producing higher EPA and DHA levels. So if we look at the supply situation of the future, there really is a lot of different options that will supplant what is currently coming out of the ocean, even though that really is only 4% of what the harvest is. So we at GoEd believe that the omega-3 business has a huge upside, so much potential in the future, but we also feel like we can grow to the levels that we think would help public health and really help all of our businesses and still manage to do it in a sustainable fashion. Thank you very much.